Let's get started about who we are and what you are doing.
Awesome. Hey everyone, I'm Josh. Improve themselves and be a unicorn. And
Awesome, thank you.
Cool, Josh. So my name is Anton, and it's called STRATMINDS present. So like for the founding designer at WhatsApp, and after that I spent another 3 years at AI search company called Niva, which has been acquired by Snowflake this past May. So now I'm combining this interest in AI, product design, and investments in my day-to-day life.
Awesome. So thank you. So we have two people, one of the unicorn founder, and another one is someone who designed for more than 1 billion people, right? Thank you for joining this conversation. So you were always talking about the living interfaces. Define what the living interface is and why before the living interfaces never existed. You know, I've been to all these fancy websites and it's nice animations, but what does the living interface mean?
so to me, living interfaces means that there's intelligence underlying the user interface. Before, websites and apps of tedious work across design, engineering, marketing, products to improve these interfaces. And it's a very slow cycle. Kind of the living part of it is the human part. And now with this kind of revolution of generative AI, we have the ability to basically produce reasoning in a sort of mass production type manner very quickly and at low cost. And so what that allows us to do is put that human touch of improvement into websites to the point to where they're actually able to improve themselves. So to me, living interfaces effectively means self-improving, evolving user interfaces.
Does that mean that we would have, each of us who are currently speaking would have a personal website? Or
I do see an internet that is industrial revolution of intelligence of generative AI.
And I would like to add that basically what we are in the world is relations. And the relations is very messy and can be anything really. So this anything can be helped a lot with what we have as an AI technology right now. So if you think about in everything, so here's his resume. So kind of like this middle part can be anything. This living interface in the middle can be anything. It can be like a service, it can be an app, it can be even hardware generated on the fly. It's kind of like, long-term goal for us.
Cool.
So that's what I think is interesting here too.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. And Anton, I know that your STRATMINDS VC, you are investing into UX-focused companies. That's very rare to hear in a Silicon Valley. And how do you define which is the good UX and which is the bad UX? Because everyone got the UX to a certain extent. Someone just don't know that it exists. But how do you define which one is investable and which one is totally not?
I like to say that we invest in founders who have big ears for their customers. And if you look at the companies I've been for a long time before, in WhatsApp, Jan and Brian were reading customer emails for a few hours a day till WhatsApp got to like 150 million users. So it's pretty involved. So kind of like, to have this short feedback loop to kind of like listen what your actual customers want from you and where they direct the product is a key to kind of like this, thesis that we have. And what helped me before in my, journey designing and kind of like taking care about user experience, like if you don't even have the data, go into, Twitter, X, whatnot, and doing the query, something like WhatsApp sucks, or in your case, maybe like Coframe sucks when you have a lot of users. So kind of like being proactive in this aspect helps you to understand if you care about user experience or not.
Awesome. I mean, when you think about the AI, there is definitely the human, there is a very artificial and pragmatic aspect of it. But also humans read emotions and humans drive by emotions. That's no doubt. We are not logical species. We are looking at something, we want it or we don't want it. We don't even understand ourselves. So how do you see in the future of the interfaces, where is that merge, and will the AI take over pretty much the human part of it, with the emotional one and more logical and pragmatic one, where we will not be able to understand it? Yeah. Where do you guys see it coming?
Well, so I guess I can extrapolate out emotion into tone, and then resonance. How does it connect with you? Every brand has tone that they want to uphold. They have a tone of voice, and AI has proven to be good at that as long as it's able to see enough of your brand. And as far as resonance goes, something resonates with you if it connects with you and it has context about you. It's the same with people actually as well. So being able to connect on sort of like an emotional level from a product standpoint, in my opinion, is about representing your brand and what you do, and also knowing your customer and what they need and what the context is on them. So it's like the two parts of it. Luckily for us, AI is actually very capable of understanding both sides of that equation, understanding the brand tone and you as an organization, what you're trying to convey, what you represent, what you stand for. And it's also very good at, we're finding very good at understanding your users and understanding the context around them, what they need. And so when you have both sides of that equation, over time, I do see an eventual shift towards AI being able to undertake some of these more, what we would call today, like emotional aspects of UX.
If you think about how we have drive-in UI for Spotify and regular UI for Spotify, eventually imagine like when AI senses the emotional state you're in. So for example, you're like distressed or unfocused or just woke up. So interfacing can adapt to the way you feel. And I could see that the models in the future will be not just trained on the text layer that they are currently trained on, but we'll probably be able to train the models on emotional layer as well. So try to imagine kind of like how do you represent signals that emotions have, and how interfaces can be adapted to this, and how you can communicate the text based on like in the like stressful emotional state, you are not able to process as many information as you can in kind of like default or baseline state. So kind of like interfaces will probably be able to adapt to this emotional thing we humans have.
Awesome. That's very interesting. So in the future, pretty much all the interfaces will be adapted to me, and it will be adapted to the many layers of my emotional state here and now, right? Interesting. What about the moment where you were working on these amazing products, right? And you were using AI pretty much as the tool to designing. What are the most inconvenient or thing that you found out that helped you to build the design for AI design? Because building design for AI design is something that never ever existed before, and we are just 1 year in. So I'm curious, guys, how will you define those problems and what you were actually doing? What insights did you found?
I like this question. I think the way I'm thinking about this question is like, what does AI enable with respect to UX that wasn't possible before? One thing is just this idea of ambient intelligence. So I've kind of generally like to think about it. Incorporating intelligence that is not necessarily predefined or structured into the products that you're building so that the users have a better understanding of what's going on. One example of this would be in our own product, Coframe. We're starting to think about this. What we do at a high level is provide variants in an evolutionary style that basically make the copy or the images, so forth, of your website better and better over time. But something we found that's important to users is understanding why certain variants might be better, worth trying, what the hypothesis is, and what the goal of the experiment is. And so that's not something you can kind of like hard code, because every variant that we produce is going to be different. And so to guide the user to that place of understanding why it's interesting, we kind of started to think about this notion of ambient intelligence, where we can provide explainability and reasoning and rationale behind why we've given a certain recommendation for an experiment. And that's proven to be quite important and useful for users, being able to kind of hold their hand, walk them through in a way that you can't really predefine. It kind of needs to be defined. Another area that I think is quite interesting toward this notion of ambient intelligence that we've kind of theorized about and some people are starting to build around is just-in-time UI, user interface that is generated on the fly based on the task at hand that's required. And this is really interesting because it basically allows you to have this notion of like under the surface, you have APIs or services that do certain functions. And you have this UI layer that's able to leverage this underlying functionality in a way that is the most efficient possible for that end user, without predefining it and kind of constraining it in that way. So that opens up a whole new world of user experience journey possibilities, makes ultimately that UX really efficient and nice. So I think that's going to be a major shift in what's possible with UI.
Adding up on that, so if you think about this just-in-time UIs, so traditionally what we think about AI as an interface is this command line interfaces, kind of like you issue your prompt and then you get something back. But it doesn't have all this fine-tuned tools that designers are traditionally good at, because like the tools that, designers expect of their tools and creative tools is ability to be like very like fine-tuned, responding to your feelings and emotions, kind of like, I want this like 10% brighter, I want this kind of like 10 pixels left or whatnot, like whatever it is. So like adding the just-in-time UI to the prompting, so combining this to, I guess, philosophies of interfaces is something I think where the design tools of the future will move over time. And I'm thinking another interesting idea is probably using more of your body in the way you design. Over time, I think design tools will shift not just to, screens or voice, but maybe having more of that at the same time. So kind of like, I can point and tell, and like you understand better what I mean if I'm doing this several channels at the same time. And our design tools will probably have the same, like multi-channel or multi-modal interfaces in the future, like utilizing space, utilizing emotions, utilizing voice, utilizing what happens on the screen, or maybe like what other people do, and utilizing relations as well. So depending on kind of like what's the current emotion between these two components, what your feelings about this is, the design tools will probably be able to address this as well.
Yeah, so it's right now it's multimodal, and then that's multidimensional or something like this, right?
In a way, yeah. You could think about the Loom, recent acquisition, as kind of like there's few channels happening at the same time. One is what's happening on your screen, and other is your voice and video. Yeah. So this is very, I think, important for remote communication where you're not in the same space. Like you're kind of like complementing what you traditionally used to have in the conversation we have in person with some tools that utilize more of these channels at the same time. So like if we build design tools that allow for that, that's better for all of us as humans.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing all of that. So I have a thesis, right? The thesis is that like previously you need to have a bunch of developers who will code your startups, and then you have to invest and put them into one house on 1K for a year, and then you would have the MVP or even POC. And then you will try to raise some funds, and then the technology becomes an asset. So my thesis is that nowadays the technology is not that of an asset anymore. And therefore, there is only two things left. There is a marketing and a customer acquisition, and there is a user experience. What do you think about it? Agree or disagree with it? What are your thoughts on that? Because I see that right now you're either building something that is very custom to the very narrow target audience with the use of AI to speed up the process and decrease the cost, and building something hyper-personalized, or you just spend all the cash and then you eventually dead. But I might be completely wrong because there is many great technologies out there. What are your thoughts?
That's an interesting thesis. I like it. I definitely see the trend of engineering costs like going to the bottom. That's a trend. We're not there yet. We're not going to be there fully like in a long time, I don't think. But that's certainly where things are headed with AI-assisted programming and things of that nature. We're actually using that quite a bit internally at Coframe, and it's kind of an interesting philosophy to live behind. The UX is very important. To me, though, what UX comes down to when you have AI systems that can, in fact, create and produce UX, the advantage is going to come down to data, because data is how you understand what the users actually want to experience. UX, user experience. That UX is informed by what you know about your user base, what you've known in the past about your users, what you know about this new existing or new user that's coming in, the context you have on them. And so that data is going to be a massively important part of the future of products. And then exactly what Kirill said, like the importance of the go-to-market, the channels, the way to distribute. It's obviously quite important. And that also, by the way, feeds the data. So like it's a yin and yang. I mean, they feed each other. Having distribution gets you more data, which gives you better products and user experience, which then gets you more distribution, and it's a cycle.
So to add to that, I'm thinking, okay, so what's AI good at traditionally? It's mostly about predicting what has been in the past. So how does this relate to creativity and innovation? So if you, for example, you have all the data about how people are using Nokia phones, right? Going back to the past, like how do you come up with something new? So this is where I think humans come, and they are traditionally better at maybe like sensing what's up, what's next, what they are not comfortable about. So yeah, I believe, like as you said, data is probably the new product, and data equals user experience in a lot of cases. So kind of like, for sure, you should respect your existing customers, like, and maybe kind of like future customers, but you also have to think where something is going to be ahead of time, so you can build to predict what's going to happen. So you could see a lot of companies dying because they don't look in the future, and BlackBerries and Nokias and companies like that, they kind of like they're very good. And if you remember, like, or WhatsApp, when it was explaining what it is to our customers in the first year, we were talking like it's like BBM for iPhone, so like BlackBerry Messenger for iPhone. Kind of like you like provide this great experience, but kind of like think what's kind of like the next step of where Apple is going, the next step where Google is going, the next step where kind of like living interfaces are going to be going in the future. So yeah, that's where I'm thinking humans are not replaceable. Okay. And creativity and innovation, you cannot replace it with just AI prediction.
Awesome. One personal question, Anton. I know that in WhatsApp, you were one of the designers who who added the emojis into the chats, right? To the chats of the interfaces. So before the WhatsApp, I barely remember there were any emojis in the chats as we know it right now. Do you think that was one of the highest impacts on the WhatsApp growth, or how do you see, and that had any influence on the user experience overall?
To be more true to the history, I guess it's coming from Japanese operators like Docomo and everything like this. And they had it very simple, kind of like 16 by 16 pixel grid for emojis. And eventually when Apple wanted to launch iPhones on Japanese market, they had to support this. So they created the original set of emojis for iPhone. But I think WhatsApp was more instrumental in how it got to multiple platforms. So because like not all platforms had the support for emojis, and we were allowing cross-platform communication, including emojis. That made the communication richer, and this is what people, I think, want eventually, kind of like this rich communication, not just using text, using more, using voice, using videos, using like stickers, emojis, like whatnot. I don't even know what's gonna come with just-in-time generated stickers, for example, or like anything that's coming with AI. So it's definitely, I see the richness of communication is something that pushes the products forward.
Yeah, and within the decreasing cost of the production of the videos and the audios and the ads, do you see those video experiences that we can create on stage live by the prompt will be more and more common into the interfaces and as a type of the communications that's happening between the users?
Yeah, I think that's true. But what I noticed when I'm asking Midjourney to generate me some interface, it's usually heavily influences by styles from the past. Like it's, probably getting some very skeuomorphic interfaces from early iPhone ages and early Apple ages versus kind of like generating something that's, you could imagine as the future. So kind of like, how do you do something that's from the future? How do you do something that's not looking as a thing from the past? So I'm still like waiting for, some technology to come to more of online state. So kind of like I'm not an AI generated or trained on the data from 2001.
Okay. Thank you. One last question. When it comes to the product market fit, I know, Josh, that you've been testing different hypotheses and you've been interviewing the users a lot, but how can you help and how do startups to navigate to get to the product market fit, and how would you define the product market fit itself? Because I know there have been a lot of different thoughts and hypotheses, and then you narrow to the audience. How would you suggest to do it in the AI space where everything is so fast?
That's a great question. The way I think about product market fit in AI is basically the same as prior to this new boom, which is to say you have a clear understanding of who your customer is, you have a product that can scale, and then you have a distribution channel that's repeatable. You have a method of kind of just growing, and it works. Like the unit economics should also work as well. And how it relates to actually attaining that is sort of like the dark art. That's the part that's hard, is actually finding that. And this is going to be different for every business. The shared aspect across all businesses is that you should have customers pulling this out of your hands. There's like a sense of pull that you start to feel like people really, really want this. They're coming after me. They're chasing me down, either if they're currently using it or if they're wanting to use it for prospective customers. That's a big one. And then for us in particular, it's really been about the results, like actually getting hard numerical, like this is either working or it's not. So for Coframe in particular, just to give you an example, we're in the business of improving conversion rate and like metrics for people, however they define the metrics. Usually it's conversion rate or engagement rate and so forth. By using AI-generated variants of copy, images, basically the self-improving website concept that I told you about. For us, we know it works if we're able to increase the conversion rate. If like what we produce is like very clearly better than what they come in producing. And so, yeah, we were first able to get that signal kind of like a couple of months ago, and up until this point now, where we like have a pretty significant increase of conversion rate on average across all of our experiments for people compared to their baseline. So like that was kind of a clear thing for us. It's like, okay, this can work. It's time to lean in and double down and scale this up and build, a more robust feature set around this, which is what we're currently doing. So that's just for us, but for every startup, it's going to be different. It really just comes down to, I guess, what we were talking about earlier, listening to your customers and having that connection to the real world, having true signal. It's easier to kind of like delude yourself, but you really need to actually have real world signal and have that feeling of pull from the market, and then ensure ideally that it's scalable from a product standpoint and repeatable from a channel standpoint.
Some ideas from me on this point. I'm thinking kind of like if you look in the past and what is usually a driver of product market fit or good products, you kind of like either have to create something new, either you have to create something that's 10x better than what exists on the market, or you can create something that's cheaper. That's usually kind of like, what drives adoption. And if you look at how it changes in the age of AI, so I guess you have to get some asymmetry, kind of like you have to get a new data. Like you have to create a data where it didn't exist before. So kind of like creating product that is about, like automating or digitizing something that hasn't been digitized and creating products out of that. Number two is kind of like creating better data. So kind of like, how to make data better. So it's not kind of like random, or sometimes like superpopulation of many sources of data, which makes it, like a little bit unified and not personalized, and getting like cheaper or getting more value from the data or making data cheaper. Like this, I guess, maybe keys for how to get to product market fit in the new AI first products. So just a little bit of that.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. When it comes to the building the startups, what are your thoughts on your projections for the next year for the open source models against the models that were created by the giants? So, what are your thoughts on what you should use as someone who is starting to build their own AI product, and what are the future of the open source with enclosed?
Yeah, the future of open source. So open source models basically give you the ability to fine tune your models to an extent that you aren't able to do with closed source ones. What we're seeing is that, like, and I was asking about this to OpenAI. Are they going to allow you to do RLHF on their models? And the answer for now is no. And so if you want to be able to do RLHF, reinforcement learning from human feedback, which basically means like taking customer preferences in real time and incorporating it into your AI stack and your model, you're going to need to use open source models. And so that's a kind of an important thing to consider. The other thing to consider on the open source side is cost. It's way cheaper to run open source models typically, not always, but typically. And it also depends on the fine degree to which you need your task is. If it's a very specific type of task, typically smaller models that are highly fine-tuned on that task can actually outperform the massive LLMs that are generalizable and do very, very good at that specific thing. They might not be good for anything else, but they're very good at that specific task. And so that actually becomes a really interesting kind of factor in this. There's an analogy to be drawn between open source models comparing to like all the different flavors of Linux and that being kind of open source, and then the large closed source models, which are maybe comparable to Microsoft and Mac OS, Apple, and highly supported, highly generalizable, really nice UX, nice to just call as an API from the closed source model standpoint, and then nice to use from the Microsoft and Apple standpoint. But with Linux, you're able to like play around with a lot of different kind of features of the model and fine tune it for your task and fine tune the operating system for your task. I mean, the analogies go on, but that's generally what I'm seeing with that.
If you can take the idea of cater to your customers to the max, to the next step here, what open source was usually good at, they were catering to developers really well. So they are kind of like, how do I serve myself better? So instead of having this long feedback loop of kind of like, please build me some developer tool that I need. So people were able to organize and use community power to actually bring this to fruition, to bring this to reality. And I'm thinking AI models will follow the same path in a lot of ways. And you could probably see how innovation from Mistral, like this mixture of models, for example, like they were first in a way, like faster than bigger like OpenAI or some like others to bring this new way to make things cheaper, which what developers want. So kind of like, probably similar in performance, or maybe not the best, like top of the shelf, kind of like GPT-4 Turbo Plus, whatnot, but it makes inference like 5 times cheaper than what you're able to get from kind of like comparable models from commercial providers.
Awesome. And my in closing question would be regarding the team forming and the team structures. Anton, let's start with you. So when you look at the teams on the startups that you guys invest into, what are the main criteria for you to define whether this startup would be successful or not? And how do you approach vetting the team against vetting the founder?
I don't know. It's kind of like magic. Like there's such a variety in the way people form teams around ideas. So I'm open to diversity and I'm open to democracy. Like whatever wins, like you can have a innovation coming from research type of team. So kind of like it's like super research. It's not publishing anything out to the users like for 5 years, and then eventually they get something like this is probably OpenAI case. Or you can kind of like get something out, especially in the SaaS. You get something out, you get feedback, you iterate super quickly, you get to product market fit in the first half a year of your existence. So like you have to be sensible here. I don't want to predict like what type of team. So kind of like, whatever fits the idea, whatever fits the type of innovation that is created. But I guess I would probably stress like intellectual honesty in the team, so people kind of like are not deluded too much, and if they're dreamers, it's fine, but kind of like not kind of like too delusional. But I don't know. It's all a guessing game, and I hope we're right, but we'll see.
Interesting. Josh, what are your thoughts on the team building? I know that you had experience in the managing huge teams, and then you are pretty much the team of 4, right? Is it the team of 4 or team of 3?
4, yeah.
It's a team of 4, right? What are your thoughts and what are your experience on the future of the team building in the AI startup world, I guess?
Yeah, so something I've learned over the last couple of years is that small teams can really accomplish great things. And in fact, when you grow your team to a certain point, your velocity or your ability to move as a team can actually diminish because with n team members, you have n squared number of connections you need to make between them. It just becomes really complicated. And so as a result, small teams are generally better for being agile, being adaptive and reactive to what you're trying to build, and being able to take in, so especially this is important at the early stage when you're trying to take in as much signal as possible from your customers and users and incorporate that into your products and be able, like, the number one advantage of a startup is always speed and sort of adaptability. And so having that is really important. And the best structure, in my experience so far, has been small teams that can do that. Now, there's a really interesting thing happening with generative AI, and that is it is able to multiply the impact of any single team member. This is true with development. At Coframe, we're using AI-generated code very heavily. We're actually like dramatically increasing our own velocity as a result of this. This is true with marketing as well, with all the different roles. Design is a little bit earlier, but it's coming out and developing. And what I think is going to be an advantage for certain startups and certain smaller teams that are able to jump on this is keeping your team lean, being really thoughtful about having really high level of talent density. That means like very elite people who are working with you, ensuring that you don't compromise on that, and then equipping these people with AI tools to be able to multiply their productivity and their output. That's what we're really betting on at Coframe. We don't want to grow the team really that much at all. I mean, we want to have a very small, lean team and take it all the way to IPO with that. I mean, that's the ideal.
Yeah, when the Josh saying the small team, he means 4 people who are generated 1,500 subscriptions, including Microsoft and all, and Samsung and all these big names and the Monday.com.
2,500.
Yeah, 2,500. Sorry, man. Yeah, so like when you say lean, that means very lean, that's what I was always curious to learn. Thanks for joining the panel. Thanks for listening. Thank you guys.
All right.
Thank you.